Backstage at America's Got Talent was its own universe. Bright screens flickering with past performances, producers rushing around with clipboards, performers practicing last-minute routines, and the constant hum of excitement vibrating through the air. But in one quiet corner far away from the noise, a different kind of energy existed, one that felt still, fragile, almost sacred. There sat a frail Filipino father named Mateo Reyes, hunched slightly in his wheelchair. His breathing was faint and shaky, every inhale a small effort, every exhale a whisper of determination. A thin oxygen tube curled along his cheeks, disappearing behind his ears. His hands, bony and trembling, clasped two things tightly, a worn wooden rosary and a folded piece of paper containing the lyrics of the song he had written for his son. The paper had faint creases and smudges, as though it had been held many nights during moments of quiet prayer. Beside him stood his 12-year-old son, Eli. The boy kept his hand resting on his father's arm, gripping it as if he feared it might slip away. Eli's eyes were puffy from tears he tried so hard not to show. His messy black hair fell across his forehead, and he kept brushing it back nervously as he watched over his father, with a maturity no child his age should ever need. Every few seconds he would lean down and whisper, "Papa, are you okay?" And every time Mateo would answer with a slow, reassuring nod. A producer approached them gently, her expression shifting from her usual busy excitement to soft concern. She knelt so she could be eye-level with Mateo. "Sir, Mateo, are you sure you want to do this? We can give you more time if you need." Mateo looked up, eyes warm with gratitude but resolute with purpose. His weak voice drifted out like a breeze. "No, I'm ready. I don't want to wait anymore. I need to do this now. For him." His gaze shifted to Eli, and in that moment, the entire world shrank into just the two of them. He reached up and touched his son's face with trembling fingers. "Anak, listen to me. No matter what happens today, or tomorrow, or any day after, Jesus is with you. Remember that." His voice cracked, but he forced a gentle smile. "And your papa loves you more than anything in this world." Eli swallowed hard, trying to hold back his tears, but they pushed through anyway. With a shaky breath, he whispered, "I'm right here, Papa. I won't leave you." The raw tenderness between them made even the backstage staff fall silent. A cameraman lowered his equipment. A makeup artist stopped mid-step, her hand over her heart. Even the runner who hurried by with cables paused for a moment, blinking back emotion. In a place filled with glitter, noise, and big dreams, this quiet father and son became the center of everything. Two staff members arrived to help Mateo stand. When they gently lifted him from the wheelchair, his legs trembled beneath him, thin and weak from months of illness. Eli immediately stepped forward and slid under his arm, supporting him with small but determined strength. Mateo leaned heavily on him, yet kept his head held high. Every movement was careful, painful, but purposeful. They walked slowly toward the stage entrance, their steps echoing lightly across the floor. The hallway lights dimmed as they approached the curtain. The familiar booming voice of the announcer filled the theater speakers. "Next up, from the Philippines, Mateo Reyes." A wave of uncertain murmurs spread through the audience. Curiosity, surprise, whispers of concern at the sight of a fragile man stepping onto one of the world's biggest stages. The curtain parted. Bright white spotlights bathed Mateo in a heavenly glow as he reached center stage. He held the microphone with both hands to keep them from shaking. The judges looked up, visibly startled. Simon leaned forward instantly, brows drawing together. Sophia covered her mouth softly. Heidi's eyes softened with empathy. Howie straightened in his seat, sensing something deeper than an ordinary audition. Mateo lifted his chin, summoning strength from somewhere unseen, somewhere holy. His breath trembled as he spoke. "My name is Mateo." He paused, catching air. "I came here today to sing a prayer for my son." The audience froze. The judges didn't blink. Even the air seemed to stop moving. And as the camera zoomed in on the father's fragile face, illuminated under the silent glow of the spotlight, one thing became clear. This wasn't just another performance. This was a man offering his last strength, his last hope, his last song, for the person he loved most. The first soft piano notes slipped into the air like a prayer drifting up toward heaven. The lights dimmed around the stage, isolating Mateo in a warm, golden glow. He stood there, thin, fragile, almost translucent under the brightness, yet there was an unmistakable strength in the way he held the microphone, both hands wrapped around it, knuckles pale, as if anchoring himself to this one final moment. He closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, nothing existed, not the thousands of people in the audience, not the judges sitting before him, not the millions watching through cameras. Only silence, sacred, heavy silence. And then his voice emerged. It was soft at first, barely more than a whisper, but it carried a purity so raw that it sliced straight into the heart. Jesus, hold my son tonight. A single collective gasp rippled across the theater. His voice was imperfect, fragile, trembling with age, illness, and emotion, but those imperfections made every note more human, more real. This wasn't a man trying to impress. This was a father offering everything he had left. Backstage, little Eli stood frozen at the curtain's edge, his hands pressed together as if trying to hold his heart inside his chest. Tears were already streaming down his face, but he didn't bother wiping them. He knew this song. He had heard his father sing it quietly on nights when they weren't sure he would see another morning. But hearing it here, on this stage in front of the world, felt like witnessing something holy. Mateo's voice wavered as he continued, but there was a beautiful strength in the wobble. If my hands grow too weak, be his light. The melody floated over the audience like something sacred. People who had come expecting entertainment now found themselves clinging to tissues, sleeves, the hands of loved ones. Even those who didn't understand the words could feel the love inside them. The cameras cut to the judges. Sophia's eyes shimmered with tears, her hand pressed against her chest. Heidi's lips parted in awe as she whispered something unintelligible under her breath. Howie leaned forward, nodding slightly, not as a judge, but as a father. But Simon Cowell was experiencing something different. He wasn't just moved, he was shaken. He stared at Mateo with an expression rarely seen on the AGT stage, vulnerable, unguarded, emotional. His jaw tightened, and he blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the rising wave inside him. Mateo took a shaky breath, gripping the microphone tighter as the music swelled. "If I can't stay for me," his voice cracked, not the kind of crack that comes from a mistake, but the kind that comes from a breaking heart. He paused, gathering strength, and for a moment the piano played alone, carrying the weight of the moment. Then he opened his eyes. He looked not at the audience, not at the judges, but toward the wing, where Eli stood with tears on his cheeks and hope in his eyes. That's when Mateo lifted one trembling hand, reaching outward. The gesture was small, but it crushed the entire room. "Guide him when I cannot be." Someone in the audience sobbed loudly, unable to hold it in. The camera operators, who normally moved around capturing every angle, had stopped, completely. Not because they were instructed to, but because they simply couldn't bring themselves to interrupt the moment. Mateo's voice grew faint, but resolute. "Jesus, let him know. A breath, a tremble, a fight against the body trying to fail him. His father loves him so." The note drifted, quivered, and stretched through the air like a desperate plea. His knees buckled slightly, and for a second, it seemed as though he might collapse. Eli jolted forward, but a staff member gently held him back, allowing Mateo to finish the moment he had built his strength for. The music softened to nothing but the faintest shimmer of piano. Mateo's final words floated out. "Take me if you must, but please, protect my son." The last note didn't end, it surrendered, and then silence. Not a murmur, not a shuffle, not a breath. The entire arena froze in reverence, and then the world exploded. Screams, applause, sobs, a tsunami of emotion crashing through the theater. People leapt to their feet, some covered their faces, others clapped so hard their hands turned red. Eli ran onto the stage, his small arms wrapping around his father, with a force that spoke of fear, love, and relief, all at once. Mateo's face crumpled as he embraced him, tears slipping down his cheeks. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was a father's final offering, a prayer wrapped in melody, a moment that would stay in every heart that heard it. The theater was still vibrating with the aftershock of Mateo's final note when the golden confetti machines began to quiet down. The applause lingered, people clapping through their tears, unable to fully process what they had just witnessed. But at the center of all that noise, stood a fragile man and his young son, holding each other as if the rest of the world had disappeared. Mateo's body trembled in Eli's embrace. His breaths were shallow, small, shaky gasps that seemed to pull the entire room into a hush again. Eli held on tighter, burying his face in his father's chest, crying openly now. His small hands gripped the fabric of Mateo's shirt. Terrified that if he let go, his father might vanish with the falling confetti, backstage, the crew watched through the curtain in stunned silence. Some had tears running down their cheeks. Others stood frozen, hands clasped together, as if witnessing a miracle happen in real time. Even the security guards, a group not easily moved, were visibly shaken. The judges needed a few moments to compose themselves. Heidi wiped tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand, whispering something to Sophia, who nodded and clutched a tissue close to her face. Howie looked down at his desk and shook his head slowly, overwhelmed by the weight of what he'd just seen. But Simon Cowell didn't move. He sat completely still, elbows resting on the table, hands clasped tightly in front of his mouth. His eyes were red, not the slight glossiness seen in emotional moments, but full, deep redness from holding back tears that had already escaped. His expression wasn't the Simon the world was used to. There was no critique forming behind those eyes, no snarky comment, no witty remark. This was a man broken open. This was Simon seeing the father he once lost. This was Simon seeing the things he feared most. This was Simon seeing pure love on a stage where fame often overshadows humanity. Finally, he stood. The audience gasped. Simon almost never stood unless he was moved beyond words, but even then, he usually applauded from where he was. Not this time. He stepped out from behind the judge's table and slowly walked toward the stage. The room went dead silent. The cameras panned to follow him, capturing each careful step. Mateo looked up, eyes cloudy but still searching for the source of this unexpected movement. Eli, still holding his father, turned just as Simon climbed the stairs to the stage. Simon approached them quietly, his breath and steady, and his face vulnerable, in a way no one had ever seen on television. He placed a gentle hand on Mateo's shoulder. Mateo, his voice cracked instantly and he had to stop, swallowing hard. That wasn't a performance. Audience members leaned in, hanging on every word. That, he continued, voice trembling, was love, and it was the most powerful thing we have ever seen on this stage. Mateo's lips trembled into the softest smile. He squeezed Simon's hand with what little strength he had left. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. "I wanted the world to know that even when I'm gone, Jesus will take care of my son." The simplicity of the words shattered Simon completely. He pressed his free hand to his lips, his shoulders shaking slightly as he blinked back another wave of tears. He leaned down and placed his forehead gently against Mateo's for a brief moment of connection, something he had never done in the history of AG. When he stepped back, he turned to Eli. Simon knelt, kneeling to a child in front of millions of viewers. "You are so brave," Simon whispered to him. "And your father, he loves you more than anything. Never forget that." Eli nodded through tears, his small hands gripping Simon's arms. Then Simon rose, walked back to the judge's desk, and without hesitation, he slammed his hand onto the golden buzzer. The auditorium exploded. Gold confetti shot from cannons. The music blasted through the speakers as the crowd erupted into cheers and sobs. But the sound barely mattered. What mattered was the way Mateo lifted his face to the falling gold pieces, tears pouring down his cheeks. He raised his trembling hand toward the sky, and with the last bit of strength he had, whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." The cameras zoomed in on Mateo's face. Every tear, every wrinkle, every ounce of peace captured forever. Another camera captured Simon wiping his eyes, unable to compose himself. This wasn't just a golden buzzer moment. This was a memory carved into the soul of everyone watching, a reminder of love stronger than fear, faith stronger than pain, and a father's final gift to his child.